Okay.
Okay, so welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Um, we'd just love to hear a little bit about you and what brought you to PAALF
Mhm.
and just kind of who you are, what your position is, and that kind of stuff.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here for this interview today. My name is Renate Meyer, and I'm originally from Cape Town in South Africa. So I'm an immigrant in Portland. The first time I came to Portland, I just fell in love with the city. It just seemed like such a queer, friendly, creative place where you really could just live your best life and be anything you wanted to be. And actually, a few months after that, I met my now husband in China. And guess where he's from? Portland, Oregon. And, when we started dating, we did this whole meet the folks tour. So he came home with me, and then I came home with him. It was in 2016 during the election season, and it was terrible. I had the worst time in Portland, Oregon. I felt super out of place. Everywhere I went, people stared at me. I couldn't wait to leave, and I couldn't believe that this was the same city that I'd fallen in love with. And it got so bad that my mental health started being affected. I went to see a doctor at an immigrant healthcare center, and I said, "Doctor, I feel invisible and hypervisible at the same time." And you know what he said? He said, "What you're feeling is very normal for a Black woman." And I thought, if this is normal, then I don't want to be a part of the city. And I actually ended up leaving Portland for Vietnam.
Mm.
And I knew that if I ever came back to live in Portland, I wanted to work to make sure that anyone that looks like me feels more connected, they feel more seen, and they feel more valued. I knew that that was the kind of work that I wanted to do. Fast forward a few years, we got married and we moved to Portland about a year and a half ago. I did a leadership program at PAALF, the Portland African American Leadership Forum, which is how I got introduced to the work that they do. After the leadership program, I didn't want to leave. And so I ended up getting a job with PAALF during a very exciting time, actually. The new ED, Joy Elise Davis, is really taking the organization in an exciting new direction. We've been around for more than a decade, right? But it's only been since the past 3 or 4 years that we sort of have new energy injected into the organization. But one of the most exciting things is we've adopted this Black queer feminist lens to our work, which we inspired by BYP 100, which just says that we have to center those most marginalized within the Black community. That's our starting point, right? And it's a very inclusive politic. And when we talk about lenses, we talk about the way that you view something. And that's the way that we view our work. We know that our starting point has to be centering those most marginalized. And we know that if we're not all free, then who's really free, right?
Mm. Um,
So that's a bit about me.
okay, so with that, so what are the things that PALF is really focusing on? And we know that the We Count Oregon campaign and working with the census is definitely one of your focuses. But what are some of the other things that are coming to the table, and how is that, well, not impacting, but how is that sort of coinciding with the work you're doing with the We Count?
Yeah, so I am the Census Equity Manager at PAALF. And we also have a sister entity, which is the PAALF Action Fund. And to get technical, we have a 501c3, which is where I'm working. And then we also have a 501c4, right? So PAALF, the Portland African American Leadership Forum, is where we do leadership development, like I was talking about. This is where we engage with our community through organizing, direct action, and political education. The 501c4 is PAALF Action Fund, and this is where we engage in political action, which includes lobbying, advocacy, and electoral work. So we are doing so much organizing right now because, organizing essentially is just creating community. And that's the work that we've always been doing. We strive to create a community where all people of African descent feel connected and where they are living in a city where they can thrive. So we working on our Black Possibility Survey, which is very exciting. This survey helps us build Black organizing power in Oregon. It helps us map out where Black people live so that we can create tribes where folks can get connected with like-minded folks. We are also working on a childcare campaign, which is very exciting. We're working on accessible, high quality, universal childcare campaign. And then also we're moving a lot of our work to a digital space. So we really are just, pivoting and adjusting to the new normal. But of course, my big project is the census. That's where it's happening for me right now. Um, the We Count campaign is a statewide campaign, and it's made up out of about 12 or 13 community organizations.
Mm-hmm.
All of these organizations are already doing work in hard to count communities. And these hard to count communities include Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, immigrants, refugees, renters, rural folks, and children under 5. These are the communities that are really at risk of being undercounted in the census for various reasons. But if you fall in this hard to count category, you need extra in-person engagement before you take the census. So before you take the census, you'd need someone to talk to you about the census, or you'd need someone to explain why it's so important. And so this is the work that the campaign is doing. So it's a statewide community-led effort to ensure that the hard to count communities understand and take the census. Of course, understanding the census is one thing, but what we really want is for everyone to take the census, because the census is for everyone. And the census work ties into what we do at PAALF, because, we, like I mentioned, we envision a world where people of African descent enjoy the rights, resources, and recognition to be a thriving, resilient, and connected community. So essentially, we envision a world where people of African descent count, where they matter, and where they are all accounted for, right? So during our field campaign, which is where we are phone banking and calling people about the census, our goal is to contact 5,000 Black folks about the census. Of course, because of the current global pandemic, all work has now moved online. So now I'm managing my team online, and they are rapidly meeting their field goal. They're doing an amazing job because this work is really urgent. Black people are historically undercounted, and we need to disrupt that pattern in Oregon, because the census is about power, it's about money, and it's about representation, right? And I'm sure we'll dive into this a bit more, but the number of people counted directly correlates to the amount of funding that we get for programs. And all Oregonians rely on these programs, whether you think you do or not. I like to think of the census in terms of your quality of life. The census impacts your quality of life. And I'm sure most of us can care about that, right? And make a connection with that.
Right.
But also, the 2020 census could mean another seat in Congress for Oregon, which is an opportunity for our voices to be heard.
So are you, are you operating out of the PAALF office off of Williams now? Or are you all at home, or
Yeah.
how are you? I'm asking the question that I don't want you to.
Okay. No, we can wait. We can wait.
No, actually, you know what? He doesn't need to be on the call for that question. So in light of this pandemic, how are you guys dealing with the, being, how is the community accessing your center? Is it closed? Are they coming in and keeping social distancing? Are they using the facilities to fill out their census?
Yeah, we're all working from home, so we don't provide any direct services. So luckily, we haven't had to redirect folks. We're a really small team, and luckily, before all of this happened, we were all pretty well versed on digital systems. So we've all been using that. I had to hire my team of 12 organizers online. I'm managing them via Zoom. So we just had to find ways to adjust to the new normal. A lot of our programming, we are moving online. So we are so ready for this digital space. We'll be hosting a lot of events and meetups on the school digital platform called Hopin. That's really safe and secure. Um, so we'll be having social gatherings, happy hours, political education. So yeah,
How
the work is still continuing, and we're still organizing, and we still, just trying to make sure that our community stay connected.
So what have you guys been getting feedback from people? Because obviously the mailers already went out, and
Mhm.
so, and it's not complicated, is it? It's not really a bunch of complicated questions.
Yeah, not at all. The cool thing about the 2020 census is you can fill it out online. That's big. This is the first time ever that you're able to do that. And I took it online. It took me 8 minutes, and it only has 9 basic questions.
Right.
It's so basic. The census will never ask you your social security number. The census will never ask you for money. So it will never ask you for any credit card information. And the census will never ask you about your citizenship status. It's so basic. It's your name, your last name, your address, your sex. Um,
How
right
many
now,
people in the household? Yeah.
right now it's only male and female, which we can organize for more inclusive questions, but
Mm.
those are the options we have right now. How many people are living in the house? Um, and then, of course, your date of birth.
Uh,
Oh, those are
so
all the
interesting about the gender specific questions too, because we do uh, a community event, and it's a timed event, the MLK Dream Run.
questions.
But we face the same thing there. That we have to, like, it's USATF guidelines, right?
Yeah.
And I know they're wrestling with that too, because at the moment it's kind of like it's either male or female, and that's the category you're running in, right? We have age categories, but it's really only male or female. And I wonder why, because the census seems like that's relevant data if it's asking ethnicity, you know what I mean? Why it's not asking, I guess, this, the identity in terms of sexuality. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. It really is frustrating. It really feels like the census is excluding so many people, by refusing to include more markers for the way that you want to identify, right? But the good news is that this year is the first year that you can indicate that you are in a same-sex relationship. This year, we also have more markers for race and ethnicity. So we are making progress. And, also, we're telling folks who don't identify as male or female, we're telling folks who, identify anywhere on the spectrum. Fill out the one that you want to fill out for now. The census only happens once every 10 years. We could start organizing so that they have more markers for the way people want to identify. But this is what we've got this year, and we do want to make sure we get this federal dollars to our communities.
And are you finding that people are refusing to take the census because of that reason?
No, we're not really finding that that's the reason. Okay, thank you, Steve.
Bye, Stephen. Yeah, because I had one particular case of knowing somebody who did not want to take it because they weren't acknowledged in
Yeah.
that way. So, and then being able to really talk to them about, the representation that they could get, it just becomes a bit of a tug of war in terms of I'm following the rules, but I'm trying to break the rules that don't
Mhm.
suit me. So why would I follow rules that don't suit me?
No, that's so valid and that's so true. The one thing that we don't want to do is make people feel like what they're saying is not valid, right? When it comes to the Black community, there's a lot of mistrust of the government, and there's a lot of fear that's so valid, right? There's a lot of feelings around, why does this even matter to me? So we want to make space for that, engage with people when they say that. Um, but then we do want to like make that connection to make them understand that yes, the census is imperfect. Yes, we have made so many strides. I mean, there was a time where Black people were not fully counted as human. So we have made many, many strides. And yes, we do have a long way to go. But in 2020, this is what we have right now. And it's so critical that we get counted. There are a lot of people out there working to make sure that we don't get counted. And if if that motivates you to take the census, then you should take the census.
So, and it's really a part. What I've noticed about PALF is that it is like a political kind of focus group. So it's really trying to get people to exercise their civic empowerment a little bit more. So are you finding that Black people in our community are getting more civically involved or taking their civic duties a little bit more seriously these days? Or are you finding the engagement is energized in any way? Because, we came off the Black Lives Matter movement, right? From 2015, 16, probably at the time when you were here, when it just felt so like extra, right? Because there were all the protestings going on. And as you said, you were Black, so you felt both visible and invisible and hyper visible at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seemed like people were really, getting geared up to participate in that way. And it may have fallen off a little. Is it ticking back up, do you think?
I'm not sure actually. I don't have any data around that, and I haven't really been working on how to say we have been seeing any of that. But I'm pretty sure my ED could answer that if y'all want to set up an interview for that.
Okay, John, thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Hi, John.
Good to see
I'm
you.
Ray.
Hey, Ray. Yeah, I couldn't see. Yeah, now you can tell I done aged myself. Now you can see how young you is. Now I got to put on my glasses now. Eyes is the first thing to go. Folks, I'm sorry for being so late. I just meeting after meeting, but I'm glad that they got an opportunity to say hi to you and get a sense of what's going on. So, Fawn, where are you guys at in the interview? How's things going?
Right. So we talked a little bit about, some other things that PALF is focusing on. And Ray in particular is assigned to the Census campaign.
Mhm.
And, her director was Joy. And she was talking about some of, they were going strong to the femme women kind of movement and doing a lot of engagement around that community because it's a hard to reach community. And I was kind of waiting for you to join us to ask this question, John, because I know that, sort of the Black male initiatives and achievements and the condition of the Black man is a very important subject for you, right? It's just something you have deep care about. And I'm wondering about, some of the engagement around the census because, what?
Can you hear me? I care about all my Black people. I just, like I said before, it's just that Black males seem to be the most marginalized today, amongst us. So, and I keep seeing that go a little bit more left all the time. Okay, meaning that since we got, or is that something you're asking me to, to elaborate on, or is that just something you just threw out there to get my?
Well, I want to keep it also about the work of the census and the hard to count. But when I look at I've been waiting for you to really dig in with Ray about is like, what is really constituting hard to count people in the Black community? What are you seeing? Who are the hard to count demographics there that you guys are focusing on? Because is PALF specifically focusing on the Black community?
Yes. So as I mentioned, we are part of the coalition for the Hard to Count campaign. And each of these community organizations work in a specific community. And so PAALF is, we're at the table to specifically make sure that Black people get counted in Oregon.
That's neat. That's a great thing. Welcome. I've been making sure that Black people were counted for the last 60 years.
Yeah. Amazing.
Some new people are showing up to do the work, you know? But, you know, Fawn, what constitutes hard to reach demographics? And, you know, to me, it's funny though, because what constituted is when black folks refuse to open the door for white people. That's what's hard to reach demographics. You know, in my book, you know, where I grew up at in the project was the only people that came into the project was neither social workers or the police that was white, you know? So the census count, it was hard to me. What you mean is it's hard to get somebody in there to count them. You know, because they're not necessarily, they didn't send one of ourselves there. And then the people who they hired usually in there to go in there and do the count just took the money and just didn't even do the count, you know, because of some other stuff, you know. So, so there was a number of different things. But to me, hard to reach communities are rooted in the fact that status quo, or those people who are in the dominant demographic, has a difficulty facing the reality of the condition of those people. That's what makes it hard for them to reach, because they don't want to go in there and reach it because it's too reflective of what the condition that they have imposed upon them. So they're not necessarily receptive to them coming in, and they're not receptive to going in. So they've been hiring people like me for years to go reach my people because they just don't want to go over the fence because they have some of the fears and concerns that they have set up for themselves. So that's part of it. And the other part of it is, you know, the whole systemic reality of racism in this country. I mean, rather it's housing, rather it's communities, rather it's health, rather it's education, rather it's institutions. It's all relative. It's all the same stuff. The reality of it is we've been made invisible, so it's hard for us to be found.
So true. And the census is all about visibility, right? We all know what the narrative of Oregon is, that they are just white people that live here, right? But we know that that's not true. Oregon might have been founded as this white utopian state, but Black and brown communities have been living and thriving here and contributing to the economy for decades. And census is a way for us to change that narrative about what the state of Oregon looks like, because that's what some of the census data is used for, right? Is to say who lives here and what do their conditions look like.
Right, but here's where a little bit of my history in terms of how long I've been alive and how long, you know, my family, I can trace my family back. In fact, I just took my daughter back to the plantation we walked off of. And today we own half of it, you know, in Georgia. This whole reality of moving the plight from Black people from Georgia to the North, which was New Jersey and New York, right? So that's where I spent my time going to school, all that kind of stuff. But you know, when we think about, I remember when I came to this state, and I wanted to bring a certification process for the drug and alcohol licensing and certification in this state, in the state of Washington. And it was mental health, it was my background. And so I was looking at doing, since I come from this dysfunctional reality, father was an alcoholic, my mama was a mad addict. You know, one thing led to the next. I had 7 sisters and brothers, and every one of us had that X factor, you know, and not one of us escaped this ism or this issue around addiction and disease and all of that. So when I got here, but then after looking to set up culturally specific practices, a couple of years go by, and within the late 80s, you know, I get a phone call from one of the consortium members coming to sell me on an idea about diversity. And at that time, I was the vice president of the NAACP in Marion County. And they come to me and they said to me, his name is Jim Seymour. And it's so ironic because a couple of years back, I got an opportunity to find him in front of Catholic Community Services and said to him, "You sold me a lie. You sold me a lie on diversity." When they sold me diversity, they said to me very clearly as we were walking, it was a planned agenda by white America, because we had already known that affirmative action was under attack already. But when he sat me down, he was clear about, and we were walking, actually he didn't sit me, we were walking around the park, is that if we simply adopted some of these other fights or entities onto the platform, the issues of women, the issues of other cultures, handicaps, LGBTQ community. If you allowed all that on the platform, when I said why, he said that it would accelerate the platform. It would get you to your destination quicker. And I thought about it for a second and I go, well, it took us this long to get enough nerve to get culturally specific about our agendas. But now, if you're saying that this would help us a little bit, sure, I'm begrudgingly, I'll go along with it. Well, it was ironic because along the same time of a 20-year investment in that, the State of Black Oregon was published. And what we had to do as a unit of Black clinicians, we correlated that data. And we found that diversity did not accelerate us in any way imagined that by allowing others in diversity to come onto that platform. In fact, in some categories, we lost momentum. It went to -1%, and that was in the area of incarceration, right? And so I got to wondering and thinking about that, and I'm going, wow. And then equity came to play, which was to me and a lot of my colleagues like the nail in the coffin kind of thing. And the reason why I say this is this. I go to the white man most of the time, and when we talk about reparations, I see this big old green bottle I got in my hand. And I ask him and I say, listen, if you got some concerns about how I feel and think about you or whatever that might be, I would simply forgive you if you would swallow this for me. Because in it is every atrocity that you have committed upon us. And I will forgive you if you swallow this. Well, the likelihood of him swallowing this big old green jug is almost nil, you know? And nil in the sense that he would rather make this disappear before he swallows it, because it wouldn't be in his best interest to swallow this. This would probably kill him, you know, to some degree. So for him, it's more of a thought of saying, well, if I can't reason with this, then I would just as soon make you disappear, because when the white man travels the world and his ability to say he has done the greatest and he's the biggest and he's the best and he's all of this around the world, the one dark spot, and ironic that it's a dark spot, the one spot that he has that they will never let him off the hook is that they say you're not as great as you say you are because of the way you treat your Black people in your country. So he would prefer to make that entity disappear, and that was what diversity and equity was all about. It was about allowing enough diversity in that room of discussion to where he didn't have to discuss this anymore. But he could also show his goodness and humanitarianism by helping everyone else, but yet he will not address the core base issue of what civil rights was originally developed for. And that was the advancement of Black people in this country and their agendas. And we still, to this day, women and all of that are great. I love my women, I love women, you know, I can't tell you enough about how much I love them, you know. But the bottom line still remains is the only one that's still left on that platform with no growth whatsoever in the last 20 years is the Black male. And so, you know, you can bring me along as much as you want. So the census is for, in that part is really, really an important reality that we begin to understand, because status quo recognized if you kill the male, you kill the unit. You kill the structure, you kill the foundation of the family. And if you continue to do that, then you really have nothing in return. So that was just my take on what I believe why we count is so important at this point in time. Because if there are enough Black males amongst us, but we refuse to get counted. Yes, the Black woman is carrying the note on some occasions in some units, but I don't believe that the Black male is getting the appropriate credit from the family unit reality, because someone set in precedence back in the late 80s that the Black woman was the backbone of the family. That was another one of those things, you know, because I know enough Black men who carry the backbone of their families over the years that have continued to do so. So I'm all for a recount, but I'm sort of a little bit cautious about some of all these unique dynamics that we're bringing to the table about that, because there's a lot of diversity, a lot of equity and all that, but it don't point to the foundation of the problem. It continues to just make it invisible. So the last book that I'm writing this time around is rooted in this invisible man principle. And so that's where we're at. But I'm so glad to see you biting at that and moving it along and discussing it with our people and making sure that they ain't invisible no more, and make sure, let them know to put this dot or whatever it is on their head and let them know that they're going to be counted. And that's really what's important. So I hope I answered your question a little bit fine. I didn't mean to
Well,
take
I wasn't. Well, John, I feel like you gave context because the question was kind of for Ray. Hello, but I'm actually glad you shared that. Ray, I'd love for you to kind of speak to that. And I think maybe John's concern is, how are, is there a specific engagement around, African American males who John is considering a really hard to count demographic?
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, yes, I do. I have so many responses to that. I mean, I guess I want to start by saying early on in the interview, I mentioned that the second time I had come to Portland, I felt really invisible. I felt like, white people would just see right through me, or they would just touch my hair without asking, as if, I wasn't like a full human being. But I think the most concerning and upsetting thing for me was that, so I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. I was born into apartheid South Africa, which is essentially legalized white supremacy. And when I came to Portland with my now husband, he had told me that we'd be staying in a black neighborhood, a historically black neighborhood. And so this made me feel a bit better because, we had just left Cape Town and now we were coming here to meet his family. And we got to Kenton, and let me tell you, historically black does not mean that they are preserving the space so that black people always have a community. I went for weeks without seeing anyone that looks like me, and it really started making me feel crazy. Yeah. I started feeling like, people were just seeing right through me, or I would be the only black person in a coffee shop or in a restaurant. It got really bad, but it reminded me of the very specifically designed system of apartheid.
Yeah.
And this was no accident. And the fact that there are hardly any black people living in Kenton today is also no accident. And I knew that if I ever came back to Portland, I wanted to be involved with anti-displacement work. It's one thing to use the word gentrification, right? Yeah. But we should call it what it is. Families are being displaced, sometimes as far as outside of their home state, right? Sometimes families are moving to the state of Washington, or sometimes they're moving to the South, right? So that's my piece on invisibility. The exciting thing about the We Count Oregon campaign is that it's led by Black and Indigenous people. This is not just about being trusted community messengers. This is about us doing the work. This is about self-determination, right? Yeah. And it's so critical that we do this work, because nobody's got us like we've got us, right? That's right. And unfortunately, in 2010, the census undercounted 2.1% of the Black population. Right. The bad news is that was even worse than the undercount in 2000. Oh no, I might be getting this wrong a little bit, but both in 2000 and in 2010, there was a significant undercount of the Black population. I agree.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, what we are finding is that it's fear and mistrust of the government, which are very valid fears. What will the government do with my information, right? Why am I putting all of this personal information about my address on the census, right? Why are they collecting this data? Because we've seen that data collected in Black communities can sometimes be used to harm those communities. So these fears are very valid, and like I mentioned earlier, we are holding space for that. We are saying, you're right. Yes, the government has used information against Black communities. I mean, you know, in the city of Portland is so gentrified that there isn't a single Black community that exists today. There isn't a single Black neighborhood of streets and houses. Community equals strength. Community equals resilience.
Yeah, but they know that. But the bottom line still remains is that if we know that, but they also know how to dismantle that for that same reason. And that's one of
Yeah.
the things that we talked about here in Oregon for so many years is that there's no cornerstone. But I think one of the most significant differences between the Black here and from born here in Oregon historically and the one born in Georgia is the difference is the only difference. Mistreatment was consistently the same, but the only difference was that the people in Oregon could not own land. 68 years after their freedom, they still couldn't own land, whereas in other places in the United States, that land ownership. So we find it really ironic that land use in any kind of stake that would placed into the ground as a frame of reference was always removed for Blacks in Oregon. And so that's what we're long-term trying to attempt to accomplish here is a community, a sense of community identity, who we are, what we're all about. And so this is part of the reason why PAALF was created, really.
Yeah, we are all about we envision a world where all people of African descent are connected and are in community, because that's where your strength comes from. That's where your resilience comes from, right? And we've seen that Black people, especially in the state of Oregon, have been so resilient. You know, there are these, I mean, right now there's soul displacement happening, right? But Black people, they still get up every day and they do the best that they can to make sure that their community is taken care of. I mean, if there's something that Black people have always understood, it's how to take care of community, right? No matter how many barriers and hurdles that keep springing up, we're gonna keep taking care of our people, right? And one of the ways that we can do that right now during the coronavirus is taking the census, because the census makes sure that your communities get the money that they need, right? Um, right now, it's projected that we could have the worst undercount of Black folks that we've had in 30 years.
Wow.
And it is critical that we don't make that statistic true, right?
Right.
African American men have been historically undercounted in greater numbers than men of other racial or ethnic groups. This is a pattern that needs to be disrupted, right? And some of the work that we're doing at PAALF also is the school to prison pipeline. I mean, Black kids right now make up 2% of the school population, but they make up 9% of the school discipline. So we're saying that the math doesn't add up, and we are saying that we are seeing this pattern and we will work to make sure that it gets disrupted, right?
Right.
Census also misses more Black children than any other children. And if you miss a kid under 5 now, in 10 years' time, that's a teenager. 10 years of missing out on resources for Head Start, for school lunches, that's completely unacceptable.
Right on.
So, you know, for all of these reasons and more, it's so critical that our communities get counted. You know, the census only happens once every 10 years. And for every person that doesn't get counted, we lose about $4,600 per person per year for the next 10 years. That's $1 billion in federal funding. And this is funding that goes to programs that we all use. Every Oregonian uses that, whether you fall under hard to count or not. I'm talking about SNAP, Head Start, Medicaid, the roads that you use, the schools that your kids go to, money for seniors, veterans. Um, all of these people and all of these programs rely on census money. And it's also really important for the state of Oregon because a lot of our budget comes from that federal money that we get based on the census count. Also, you know, in 2010, we missed gaining another congressional seat by such a small margin that if we could make sure that we count everybody, we could gain an additional seat. That's political power, that's representation. So just some of those other programs, again, is food stamps, so SNAP, the National School Lunch Program, Medicaid, the Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP, Section 8 housing vouchers, foster care, special education grants, Head Start, low income home energy assistance program. And like I said, we all know someone, if not ourselves, that uses this, right? I mean, we all use roads. We all know people that use hospitals.
Right.
It's about quality of life, and it's high time that Black people get the resources that they deserve, and the political representation too.
So
And that census will give us.
what kind of feedback are you getting from your team in terms of people's receptions to this, in the Black community?
People's reception to the census.
Yes, to your outreach, where if you've followed up and inquired, like, hey, have you taken the census? And so what's been the feedback that you're getting?
The feedback has been well, actually. A lot of Oregonians have already filled out their census, which is very exciting. The Black Possibility Survey that I was talking about is one way for us to make sure that we actually know where Black people live, because right now on a lot of voter systems, a lot of Black people are counted as white. My ED was listed as white. Senator Lou Frederick was listed as white on the system. So really, step one is making sure that the data is accurate, which is what we're working on right now.
How is that possible?
Well, legally, the state, the government never had to release that information. Also
somebody changing it, or were they? I can't imagine Senator Lou Frederick would fill that answer out wrong.
No, so the way that these voter systems work online is they use models, and so they sort of guess your race and ethnicity. Now, in a lot of southern states, because of their history with slavery and segregation, it's illegal for the government to withhold how many Black voters there are. In the state of Oregon, we don't know how many Black voters we have. We cannot hold our Black elected officials accountable by saying that 90% of Black men feel that this issue is important, right? This is the state of Oregon. This is where we are.
Oh,
But we're working to change that with the Black Possibility Survey. We're working to get accurate information on Black people, and we're working on mapping out where do they live, and how can we make sure that those people in a specific neighborhood can be connected, right? But also we're working to make sure that we can hold elected officials accountable. Black voters across the country have always shown that their voices are really strong. And it's important to make sure that our leaders know that we're watching them, and that the Black vote matters.
Well, what's going to be done this time to make sure that people aren't miscategorized?
We're working on the Black Possibility Survey now, but I'm not sure about any other projects that are happening right now. We just don't have that data. And it's in the interest of a lot of people to not have that data, right? So just because we don't have it doesn't mean that every elected official is going to be interested in changing that reality.
Right, because a lot of times the narrative is, well, the Black population isn't that big anyway, right? So they don't really make that many people up. So it's all that.
Yeah, that's the narrative, and I mean, it's the narrative that gets shaped at such an early age for people that live here. People say things like, there are no Black people here. Black people don't live here. Black votes don't matter. Those are it's those little narratives that we have to start changing, right? We gotta stop saying that. We gotta start shifting it in like our everyday speech. Because for someone to say there are no Black people here, like right in front of me, that's like, I'm standing right here, I work at a Black-led organization with Black people. My census field team, there's a lot of Black folks, so.
Right. The invisibility, it was interesting, John, you missed it, but when she first started, she was talking about being both hyper visible and invisible at the same time. And it's just a very tugging place to be. Um, so what about, so you're an immigrant, right? So what about the immigrant community? Because I would think that some people would be like, especially if they're on temporary visas, or some are illegal immigrants or something, they're going to say like, why would I give the government that information? They're going to come find me and deport me, or they're going to start to mess with me as a result of that. How do you address those kind of fears?
Yeah, oh my gosh, immigrants definitely fall under the hard to count community, right? And as the Week on Oregon defines that as someone that needs extra in-person engagement. So what we're saying is every immigrant, and the work that we're doing is with Black immigrants, right? They need someone to tell them why it's so important to take the census. Now, we did have a big win with the citizenship question not being on the census, right?
Right, right.
That's the good news. The bad news is the sentiment and the fear was planted. The administration knew that that question was never going to make the census, because that's not the process. If you want to change a question on the census, it takes like 3 to 5 years. They knew all along that there would never be a citizenship question. But that's not the point, right? Immigrants across the country are afraid that their information will be used against them.
Exactly.
Your information will not be used against you as an immigrant. Oregon has a thriving Black immigrant community. And in fact, you know, I'm an immigrant. A lot of folks on my census field team are immigrants as well. And we really are just working to get the message out to them, right? That the census is so important. It's illegal for an enumerator to share your census information with anyone. In fact, enumerators take a lifelong oath that they won't share that information. And
Interesting.
if they break that, they can be fined or imprisoned or both. So these laws are really ironclad, right? Title 13 is what protects your census information. And Title 13 says that your information cannot be shared with anyone else, and it cannot be used to harm you. So the information that you put on your census will never be shared with your landlord. It cannot be shared with the IRS. It cannot be shared with ICE. It cannot be shared with DHS or the police. That's illegal. So Title 13 is what protects our census information.
So if I got 10 people living with me and I have only told my landlord I have 4, I should go ahead and say I've got 10 people on the census?
You should go ahead and say you've got 10 people living there. That information cannot be used against you.
Okay.
That's the message that we're trying to get out, right?
Yeah, because there's it's fear, it's shame, it's insecurity, it's always being targeted. Yeah, that's a lot to have to overcome. And I guess that's why, you know, We Count exists, and why this was prioritized really from the top down. But what was the top down in this particular case that said that this was an important campaign to pursue?
It was a coalition of Black and Brown-led community organizations that approached this dynamic organizer, Esperanza Tervalon Garrett, who's our statewide campaign manager. Esperanza did amazing work for the census in California and was really able to make sure hard-to-count communities get counted. So these local leaders got together and they went to Esperanza and they said, we need you to spearhead this project so that folks can get counted. The cool thing about the Week on Oregon campaign is it's community led. We're outside of the US Census Bureau. We're outside of the government. We are community first, right? People first. So we aren't calling people demanding that they take the census. We are calling people and asking them, have you taken it? This is how you can take it, and this is why it matters. So we really are meeting people where they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to the Black community, you know, like I mentioned, is that fear and mistrust of the government, very valid fears. When it comes to Black immigrants, fear and mistrust, you know. Black immigrants get treated very poorly in the state of Oregon. But those are a lot of news stories that we don't hear, right? So what we do is we hold space for all of that. We say, you're right. You know, information has been used against our communities in the past. But we answer their questions honestly. And You know, when we think of these three tough questions, it's people want to know what will the government do with my information? They want to know, is it safe to take the census? And finally, they want to know, why does the census matter to me, right? But you know, the government uses the information to allocate federal funding. They use it to give monies to states. And the more people you can get counted in your state, the more money your state can get for those services, right? So the number of people counted directly correlates to the amount of funding that people get, right? And again, like I mentioned earlier, they also use that data to show what a state looks like. And this is really a chance for the Black community to show that we are here and we've been here and we live here and we love here and we thrive here and we're not leaving. Everybody that lives in the United States, every living person gets counted. And we will not be intimidated. We will not be intimidated by anyone. We will get counted and we will make our voices heard. It doesn't matter what your citizenship status is. It doesn't matter if you've been previously incarcerated. It doesn't matter if you are 3 years old. If you're living in the United States, you should get counted. Another question we get is it safe to take the census? Is it safe to take this form that's asking you for your address and your date of birth? And yes, it is safe to take the census. The Census Bureau cannot share the answers it receives with anyone. They cannot share it with welfare agencies. They cannot serve it with citizen and immigration services, IRS, or the military. And like I mentioned, census employees take an oath of non-disclosure. And if they break that, they can receive up to 5 years in prison, a $250,000 fine, or both. These laws are really ironclad. Census responses must remain confidential and cannot be used against respondents in any way. And then going to the question about why does the census matter to me? You know, here at PAALF, we like to say the census is for everyone. It only counts if we all count. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we talk to people in our communities about the census. Hard to count communities need extra in-person engagement, right? So if I could ask everybody listening right now just to talk to 5 people in their professional network or in their personal network that fall in that hard to count category about the census, that's all the engagement they might need to take this census that only comes once every 10 years, right? The census matters to all of us because those federal dollars impacts all of us. And we all use those services or know someone who does use those services. So it's critical that we use this moment to make sure that we get those resources and that representation.
So how does somebody know if they've been counted or not? Because I know like some households, especially here in the more urban areas, they have a number of roommates, and maybe the roommates aren't necessarily communicating, you know, they're cohabitating, but one gets a census and goes, oh, you know, I live in the house. So are they doing some cross-referencing on data?
Yes, they do. And that's the reason that they ask you for your date of birth and your full name so that they make sure that you don't get counted twice. But, you know, it's not illegal. So if you have any fears now that you might have been counted twice, don't worry too much about it. It's likely that someone from the Bureau will follow up to make sure that you aren't counted twice. You can also call the census helpline, which is toll free, and they can let you know if someone else is taking it on your behalf or not. And
What's that number?
That number is 844-330-2020. Really easy. So it's 844-330-2020. And it's available in 12 languages. You can call them with questions or issues. You can also call that number to take the census on the phone.
Okay, and then there are several ways to take the census too, right? What are those ways?
So you can take the census on the phone. You can take the census online at census2020.gov. So just the word census, the year that we're in, .gov. And by now, we should all have gotten our unique census IDs in the mail, which is a 12-digit ID. But if you don't have that ID or you can't find it, that's okay. You can still hop online or hop on the phone. And based on your address, you can still take the census. And then the third way to take the census is by mail. So by now, most households should have received that option. But if not, the Bureau will be making sure that folks get the census in the mail, and they'll be using social distance. They'll be wearing masks and gloves, and they won't be knocking on doors. They'll just be dropping it um, in front of people's doors or in the mailbox. That way you can keep your distance while still taking the census.
Nice. Okay. Well, I think PAALF is doing a wonderful job. And how big is your team now, Ray?
Oh, our team is really small but mighty. Right now, we're a team of 5.
Oh, okay. All right. But you...
5, and then I've just hired 14 census field organizers.
Right, and I noticed that they now extended the census too because of the pandemic. Originally, they kind of extended it 2 weeks, but I think now, did I hear recently, it's longer than that?
Yes, so the original deadline to submit your census was the end of July, but we were able to advocate and get it pushed back to the end of October. This is a win. This is great news for us because it gives us more time to make sure that our communities get counted.
Oh, end of October. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. And so are you hoping that you guys can, do you see some opportunity in the future to maybe go canvassing or to be more interactive, or what is your thoughts there in terms of outreach?
Yeah, so initially we were going to have a traditional field campaign with door knocking, canvassing, which is such an effective way to organize, right? But because of the pandemic, all work has now moved virtually. We're doing a lot of phone banking and text banking. If conditions allow, we will be canvassing and door knocking if there is a way to do it that is safe and socially distant. Of course, the safety of our community is our first priority, right?
Right.
So we are guided and led by what the governor says with the amazing team that she's working with. Ideally, yes, we do get to go door knocking. But if not, we'll just keep on coming up with non-traditional ways to get this work done.
Well, Ray, thank you so much. This has been a good interview. I appreciate all that you've shared. Now, if people want to get more involved with PAALF or get more involved with the work that you're doing with the We Count Oregon campaign, how can they get connected to you all?
Yes. Thank you so much for asking. It's so easy to stay connected and stay plugged in. Of course, my first request is take the census. Take the census right now. Take it today. It takes less than 10 minutes. You can take it online. Isn't that amazing? If you have a smartphone, all you have to do is go to census2020.gov to get involved or to learn more about the campaign. You can go to wecountoregon.com and you can find all of the information about the campaign, and also the website is in different languages. And then to get involved with the work that PAALF is doing, please check out our website as well, paalf.org. That's PAALF.org. And you can also find our Black Possibility Survey on the website. So just go to paalf.org, click on Black Possibility Survey, and that's a way to stay plugged into the work that we're doing. And please also follow us on social media. You can find We Count Oregon and PAALF on Facebook and Instagram.
Anything to say, John?
No, I mean, I bet you probably asked her the question, and I don't want to be redundant because I came in late. So, but no, I think this is a great interview. And sister, welcome to Oregon. Stay tight. Stay tight. You're doing what you're doing, okay? Yeah. I always believe, people always ask me, they say, well, why'd you stay in that place called Oregon? I said that the front line to our struggles is right here.
Yes.
Because if they tell me this is the whitest place in America, well, where's a better place for me to put my stake in the ground and determine, that there's a place to be influenced here. I don't need to be where everybody else is fighting the fight. I'm fighting right on the front line, right in the front place. So anyway, I'm glad you're here. Much respect to you. Keep doing what you're doing. And if we can be of any service or help to you, you just let us know.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I completely agree. I have so much more work to do here in the state of Oregon.
Yeah.
I won't leave until I get the work done. And I'd love to end with a quote by Winnie Mandela, which says, "You cannot intimidate people like me anymore."
Yeah, wow. Wow, that's crazy. You hear that? You cannot intimidate people like me. Yeah, I'm not, this quote is from John Washington. I will not go silently into the night any longer.
Yes. Yes.
So you can forget about that. I'm done with it. So anyway, sister, again, welcome to PDS Black Rose and the good things that they're doing, and stay tuned with it. And, once we're counted, then there's the next step. We got to do something with what we're counted with. And
yes. Thank you so much. Please take the census. Thank you, Uncle John, for being here. Thank you for the interview. I appreciate you all.
Yes.
And thank you, Steve.
Okay. Thank you, Ray.
Au revoir. Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.